Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more philosophy. Today we are diving back into the works of Friedrich Nietzsche. This is Thus Spake Zarathustra. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various topics that are brought to light in the text. It's not the format for everybody, but some people seem to find some enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time you get lost in the sauce and do not understand any of the terminology that I use, there are various playlists linked in this corner and in the box down below, along with the original source material, that will explain a little bit better who I am and where I come from. With all of that being said, we are going to dive into part 4. If I can find my glasses, I'll be right back. Okay, so I found my glasses, and now we are going to dive into part 4. This is well along. I think we're like 56, chapter 56 or something like that. This is Out of Service, continuing on from where we left off. He has been picking up various people along the way, several doubters of him, and we're going to see what else comes along. Out of Service. Not long, however, after Zarathustra had freed himself from the magician, he again saw a person sitting beside the path which he followed, namely a tall, black man with a haggard, pale countenance. This man grieved him exceedingly. Alas, said he to his heart, there sitteth disguised affliction. Methinketh he is the type of the priests. What do they want in my domain? What? Hardly have I escaped from that magician, and must another necromancer again run across my path. Some sorcerer with laying on of hands, some somber wonder worker by the grace of God, some anointed world maligner, whom may the devil take. But the devil is never at the place which would be his right place. He always cometh too late, that cursed dwarf and clubfoot. Thus cursed Zarathustra impatiently in his heart, and considered with averted look he might slip past the black man. But behold, it came about otherwise, for at the same moment had the sitting one already perceived him, and, not unlike one whom an unexpected happiness overtaketh, he sprang to his feet and went straight towards Zarathustra. Whoever thou art, thou traveller, said he, help a strayed one, a seeker, an old man who may here easily come to grief. The world here is strange to me and remote. Wild beasts also did I hear howling, and he who could have given me protection, he is himself no more. I was seeking the pious man, a saint and an anchorite, who, alone in this forest, had not yet heard of what all the world knoweth at present. What doth all the world know at present? Asked Zarathustra. Perhaps that the old God no longer liveth, in whom all the world once believeth. Thou sayest it, answered the old man sorrowfully, and I served that old God until his last hour. Now, however, am I out of service, without master, and yet not free. Likewise am I no longer merry, even for an hour, except it be in recollections. Therefore did I ascend into these mountains, that I might finally have a festival for myself once more, as becometh an old pope and church father. For know it, that I am the last pope, a festival of pious recollections and divine services. Now, however, is he himself dead, the most pious of men, the saint in the forest, who praised his God constantly with singing and mumbling. He himself found I no longer when I found his cot, but 2 wolves found I therein, which howled on account of his death, for all animals loved him. Then did I haste away. Had I thus come in vain to these forests and mountains? Then did my heart determine that I should seek another, the most pious of all those who believe not in God. My heart determined that I should seek Zarathustra. Thus spake the hoary man, and gazed with keen eyes at him who stood before him. Zarathustra, however, seized the hand of the old pope and regarded it a long while with admiration. Lo, thou venerable one, he said then, what a fine and long hand. That is the hand of one who hath ever dispensed blessings. Now, however, doth it hold fast him whom thou seekest, me, Zarathustra. It is I, the ungodly Zarathustra, who saith, Who is ungodlier than I, that I may enjoy his teaching? Thus spake Zarathustra, and penetrated with his glances the thoughts and arrear thoughts of the old Pope. At last the latter began. He who most loved and possessed him hath now also lost him most. Lo, I myself am surely the most godless of us at present, but who could rejoice at that? Thou servest him to the last? Asked Zarathustra thoughtfully, after a deep silence. Thou knowest how he died? Is it true what they say, that sympathy choked him? That he saw how man hung on the cross and could not endure it? That his love to man became his hell and at last his death? The old Pope, however, did not answer, but looked aside timidly with a painful and gloomy expression. Let him go, said Zarathustra, after prolonged meditation, still looking at the old man straight in the eye. Let him go, he is gone. And though it honoureth thee that thou speakest only in praise of this dead one, yet thou knowest as well as I who he was, and that he went curious ways. To speak before 3 eyes, said the old Pope cheerfully, he was blind of one eye. In divine matters I am more enlightened than Zarathustra himself, and may well be so. My love served him long years, my will followed at his will. A good servant, however, knoweth everything, and many a thing even which a master hideth from himself. He was a hidden God, full of secrecy. Verily, he did not come by his son otherwise than by secret ways. At the door of his faith standeth adultery. Who extolleth him as a God of love doth not think highly enough of love itself. Did not that God want also to be judge? But the loving one loveth irrespective of reward and requital. When he was young, that God out of the Orient, then was he harsh and revengeful, and built himself a hell for the delight of his favorites. At last, however, he became old and soft and mellow and pitiful, more like a grandfather than a father, but most like a tottering old grandmother. There did he sit shriveled in his chimney corner, fretting on account of his weak legs, world-weary, will-weary, and one day he suffocated of his all-too-great pity. Thou old Pope, said here Zarathustra, interposing, hast thou seen that with thine eyes? It could well have happened in that way, and also otherwise. When gods die, they always die many kinds of death. Well, at all events, one way or the other, he is gone. He was counter to the taste of mine ears and eyes, and worse than that I should not like to say against him. I love everything that looketh bright and speaketh honestly. But he, thou knowest it forsooth, thou old priest, there was something of thy type in him. The priest type was he. He was unequivocal. There was something of that thy type in him, the priest type. He was equivocal. He was also indistinct. How he raged at us, this wrath snorter, because we understood him badly. But why did he not speak more clearly? And if the fault lay in our ears, why did he give us ears that heard him badly? And if there was dirt in our ears, well, who put it in them? Too much miscarried with him, this potter who had not learned thoroughly. That he took revenge on his pots and creations, however, because they turned out badly, that was a sin against good taste. There is also good taste in piety. This at last said, away with such a God. Better to have no God, better to set up destiny as one's own account, better to be a fool, better to be God oneself. What do I hear? Said then the old Pope with intent ears. O Zarathustra, thou art more pious than thou believest. With such an unbelief, some God in thee hath converted thee to thine ungodliness. Is it not thy piety itself which no longer letteth thee believe in a God? And thine over-great honesty will yet lead thee even beyond good and evil. Behold, what hath been reserved for thee? Thou hast eyes and hands and mouth, which have been predestined for blessing from eternity. One doth not bless with the hand alone. Nay, unto thee, though thou professest to be the ungodliest one, I feel a hale and holy odor of long benedictions. I feel glad and grieved thereby. Let me be thy guest, O Zarathustra, for a single night. Nowhere on earth shall I now feel better than with thee. Amen, and so shall it be, said Zarathustra with great astonishment. Up thither leadeth the way, there lieth the cave of Zarathustra. Gladly, forsooth, would I conduct thee thither myself, thou venerable one, for I love all pious men, but now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. In my domain shall no one come to grief. My cave is a good haven. And best of all would I like to put every sorrowful one again on firm land and firm legs. Who, however, could take thy melancholy off of thy shoulders? For that I am too weak. Long, verily, should we have to wait until someone reawoke thy God for thee. For that old God liveth no more. He is indeed dead. Thus spoke Zarathustra. And in here we once again get reiterated to us that he did not believe in Christianity. Now, I'm the same way. It didn't start that way, but it ended up that way. The Unconventional Bible Study will take you through, step by step, how that happened. And it is because he was a vengeful God with no idea whatsoever about a great multitude of things. He was taken completely by surprise by the fact that the children of Israel would be rebellious. He was taken by surprise numerous times all along the journey. He was taken by surprise. That's all that you really need to understand, that was not actually the divine, right? But more than that, the entire foundation of the whole book is wrong. Like, we went through and we talked about it step by step. We did word studies. We talked about all of the scriptures in great extensive detail, so I'm not going to do that here. But we will say this. There is a God, and he is true. He is real. He is everything. He is me. He is you. He is the space between me and you, and the space between me and you. He is everything you can see and everything that you cannot. He is all things in this incarnation, period, the end. But he is not the God of these control systems. He is not the God of Judaism. He is not the God of Christianity. He is not the God of Islam. He is not the God of Taoism. He is not the God as defined by the control systems. Now, Taoism gets a little bit closer to him than anything else, right? I am building somewhat of a doctrine here, but it is a very loose one, right? I just summed up most of it. God is true. God is real. God created us, in my estimation, full and complete in the way that we are. I believe in microevolution. I do not believe in macroevolution. I believe that we were created with intentionality and purpose, but it was not necessarily by God. That's a big step for some people, but it's not for me. I believe in the entities. I believe that there is things beyond the normal understanding. I do not believe that God is able to incarnate here. I believe that this is an experiment of the soul, and that this 5D reality that we live in is merely the rule set by which we play the game. And so I can hold on to some contradictions. I know that God is real because I have seen the evidence in my own life, but I cannot give that to you. I cannot give you my experience in God. I can merely tell you that I know that it is true. I have other playlists where I talked about that, right? We talk about it in the Bible study. We talk about it in Infinite Integrations. We talk about it in various other playlists because I do believe that God is there. I just don't believe that we have a definition on him. Even mine is insufficient. And so, I don't believe in Christianity. I don't believe that there was ever a required sacrifice for you to be forgiven from sin. And that is a big step for too many people. Most people will drop off right here, and that is fine. This is the narrow gate. The only thing ever required for you to be forgiven from sin was for you to give up your sin. And that is what Nietzsche is telling you in this book. Now, did he have a firm grasp on it? No. because if he had, he would not be as despondent as he often is. As we go through this, we often see him absolutely despondent because he did not have the full understanding. He did not catch the ascension part of the divinity riddle. Next up, the ugliest man. You're going to have a hard fight for that one, boss. And again, did Zarathustra's feet run through mountains and forests, and his eyes sought and sought, but nowhere was he to be seen whom they wanted to see, the sorely distressed sufferer and crier. On the whole way, however, he rejoiced in his heart and was full of gratitude. What good things, said he, hath this day given to me, as amends for its bad beginning? What strange interlocutors have I found? At their words will I now chew a long while, as a good corn. Small shall my teeth grind and crush them, until they flow like milk into my soul. When, however, the path again curved round a rock, all at once the landscape changed, and Zarathustra entered into a realm of death. Here bristled aloft black and red cliffs, without any grass, tree, or bird's voice. For it was a valley which all animals avoided, even the beast of prey, except that a species of ugly, thick, green serpent came here to die when they became old. Before the shepherds called this valley Serpent Death. Zarathustra, however, became absorbed in dark recollections, for it seemed to him as if he had once before stood in this valley, and much heaviness settled on his mind, so that he walked slowly and always more slowly, and at last stood still. Then, however, when he opened his eyes, he saw something sitting by the wayside, shaped like a man, and hardly like a man, something nondescript. And all at once there came over Zarathustra a great shame, because he had gazed upon such a thing. Blushing up to the very roots of his white hair, he turned aside his glance and raised his foot, that he might leave this ill-starred place. Then, however, became the dead wilderness vocal, for from the ground a noise welled up, gurgling and rattling, as water gurgleth and rattleth at night through stopped-up water pipes, and at last it turned into human voice and human speech. It sounded thus. Zarathustra, Zarathustra, read my riddle. Say, what is revenge on the witness? I entice thee back, here is smooth ice. See to it, that thy pride doth not here break its legs. Thou thinkest thyself wise, thou proud Zarathustra? Read then the riddle, thou hard nutcracker, the riddle that I am. Say then, who am I? When, however, Zarathustra had heard these words, what think ye then took place in his soul? Pity overcame him, and he sank down all at once like an oak that hath long withstood many tree fellers, heavily, suddenly, to the terror even of those who meant to fell it. But immediately he got up again from the ground, and his countenance became stern. I know thee well, said he, with a brazen voice. Thou art the murderer of God. Let me go. Thou couldst not endure him who beheld thee, whoever beheld thee through and through, thou ugliest man. Thou tookest revenge on this witness. Thus spake Zarathustra, and was about to go, but the nondescript grasped at the corner of his garment and began anew to gurgle and seek for words. Stay, said he at last, stay, do not pass by. I have divined what axe it was that struck thee to the ground. Hail to thee, O Zarathustra, that thou art again upon thy feet. Thou hast divined, I know it well, how the man feeleth who killed him, the murderer of God. Stay, sit down here beside me. It is not to no purpose. To whom would I go but unto thee? Stay, sit down. Do not, however, look at me. Honor thus mine ugliness. They persecute me. Now art thou my last refuge. Not with their hatred, not with their bailiffs. Oh, such a persecution would I mock at, and be proud and cheerful. Hath not all success hitherto been the well persecuted ones. And he who persecuteth well learneth readily to be obsequent, when once he is put behind. But it is their pity it is from which I flee away and flee to thee. O Zarathustra, protect me, thou my last refuge, thou sole one who divinest me. Thou hast divined how the man feeleth who killed him. Stay, and if thou wilt go, thou impatient one, go not the way that I came, that way is bad. Art thou angry with me because I have already racked language too long, because I have already counseled thee? But know that it is I, the ugliest man, who have also the largest, heaviest feet. Where I have gone, the way is bad. I tread all paths to death and destruction. But that thou passest me in silence, that thou blushest, I saw it well. Thereby did I know thee as Zarathustra. Every one else would have thrown to me his alms, his pity, in look and speech. But for that I am not beggar enough, that didst thou divine. For that I am too rich in what is great, frightful, ugliest, most unutterable. Thy shame, O there Zarathustra, honored me. With difficulty did I get out of the crowd of the pitiful, that I might find the only one who at present teacheth that pity is obtrusive. Thyself, O Zarathustra. Whether it be the pity of a god, or whether it be human pity, it is offensive to modesty, and unwillingness to help may be nobler than the virtue that rushes to do so. That, however, namely, pity, is called virtue itself at present by all petty people. They have no reverence for great misfortune, great ugliness, great failure. Beyond all these do I look, as a dog looketh over the back of thronging flocks of sheep. They are petty, good-willed, grey people. As the heron look contemptuously at shallow pools with backward bent head, so do I look at the throngs of grey little waves and wills and souls. Too long have we acknowledged them to be right, those petty people. So we have at last given them power as well, and now do they teach that good is only what petty people call good, and truth is at present what the preacher spake who himself sprang from them, that singular saint and advocate of the petty people, who testified of himself, I am the truth. The immodest one hath long made the petty people greatly puffed up, he who taught no small error when he taught, I am the truth. Hath an immodest one ever been answered more courteously? Thou, however, O Zarathustra, passed him by and sayest, Nay, nay, 3 times nay. Thou warnest against his error, thou warnest the first to do so against pity. Not every one, not none, but thyself and thy type. Thou art ashamed of the shame of the great sufferer, and verily, when thou sayest, From pity there cometh a heavy cloud, take heed, ye men. When thou teachest, all creators are hard, all great love is beyond their pity. O Zarathustra, how well versed dost thou seem to me in weather signs. Thou thyself, however, warn thyself also against thy pity, for many are on their way to thee, many suffering, doubting, despairing, drowning, freezing ones. I warn thee also against myself. Thou hast read my best, my worst riddle, myself, and what I have done. I know the axe that felleth thee. But he had to die. I looked with eyes which beheld everything. He beheld man's depths and dregs, all his hidden ignominy and ugliness. His pity knew no modesty. He crept into my dirtiest corners. This most prying, over-intrusive, overly pitiful one had to die. He ever beheld me. On such a witness I would have revenge, or not live myself. The God who beheld everything, and also man, that God had to die. Man cannot endure it that such a witness should live. Thus spake the ugliest man. Zarathustra, however, got up and prepared to go on, for he felt frozen to the very bowels. Thou nondescript, said he, thou warnedest me against thy path, and, as thanks for it, I praise mine to thee. Behold, up thither is the cave of Zarathustra. My cave is large and deep, and hath many corners. There findeth he that is most hidden his hiding place. And close beside it there are 100 lurking places and by places for creeping, fluttering, and hopping creatures. Thou outcast, who hast cast thyself out, thou wilt not live amongst men and midst pity? Well then, do like me. Thus wilt thou learn also from me. Only the doer learneth. And talk first and foremost to mine animals. The proudest animal and the wisest animal, they might well be the right counselors for us both. Thus spake Zarathustra, and went on his way more thoughtfully and slowly even than before, for he asked himself many things, and hardly knew what to answer. How poor, indeed, is man, thought he in his heart, how ugly, how wheezy, how full of hidden shame. They tell me that man loveth himself. Ah, how great must that self-love be, how much contempt is opposed to it. Even this man hath loved himself, as he hath despised himself. A great lover, methinketh he is, and a great despiser. No one have I yet found who more thoroughly despised himself. Even that is elevation. Alas, was this perhaps the higher man whose cries I heard? I love the great despisers. Man is something that hath to be surpassed. And in this one, we're going to talk about the thing that we haven't in all the rest of them, right? This is him, right? Every single one of these encounters has been him, a different aspect of him at different points in his life, from the magician to the seeker of God. Seeking God and finding God are two very different things, and if you don't find God, you can wind up pretty bitter. If you instead rely upon the control systems or the men who are in control of the control systems, you're going to find yourself quite bitter. You're going to find yourself ugly, hidden, worried about pity, and all of those things. I, again, do not believe that the control systems have been relayed to us in a way that was good for us. Now, it might have been good for them. Those people in the past who were surrounded by some pretty wild things, and they needed to raise up from outside of that mass of humanity. And so, those control systems helped with that. Judaism brought us up from the mysticism of Egypt and Midian, for example. But it did not do so in the correct manner, in my estimation, which I have detailed in great length. The same is true with Christianity. Christianity came and did a complete about-face of Judaism. It is nowhere near the first control system, right? The second control system is completely different than the first one. Islam came and did the same thing. It separated itself from Judaism and from Christianity and became its own third type of control system. It is true. Man creates control systems. And the separation from that should be a natural progression of intelligence over time. This is his exploration of his own journey away from faith, in large part. Now, we have seen all the way through this that he did not hold to the control systems even a little bit. But the further along he gets, the less he finds himself aligned with it, and I completely commiserate with that. This is him railing against his own humanity, his own pity. He sees the ugliness within himself, and yet others find him wise. And so it is a contradiction, and one that he is dealing with in this poetic discourse. There's not really a whole lot of external lessons to be pulled from this, other than that, right? It is the dissolution of the control systems and finding self-worth. Next up, the voluntary beggar. When Zarathustra had left the ugliest man, he was chilled and felt lonesome, for much coldness and lonesomeness came over his spirit, so that even his limbs became colder thereby. When, however, he wandered on and on, up hill and down, at times past green meadows, though also sometimes over wild, stony couches where formerly, perhaps, an impatient brook had made its bed. Then he turned all at once, warmer and heartier again, What hath what hath happened unto me? He asked himself. Something warm and living quickeneth me. It must be in the neighborhood. Already am I less alone. Unconscious companions and brethren rove around me. Their warm breath toucheth my soul. When, however, he spied about and sought for the comforters of his lonesomeness, behold, there were kine there standing together of an eminence, whose proximity and smell had warmed his heart. The kine, however, seemed to listen eagerly to a speaker, and took no heed of him who approached. When, however, Zarathustra was quite nigh unto them, then did he hear plainly that a human voice spake in the midst of the kine, and apparently all of them had turned their heads towards the speaker. Then ran Zarathustra up speedily, and drove the animals aside, for he feared that someone had here met with harm, which the pity of the kine would hardly be able to relieve. But in this he was deceived, for behold, there sat a man on the ground, who seemed to be persuading the animals to have no fear of him, a peaceable man and preacher on the mount, out of whose eyes kindness itself preached. What dost thou seek here? Called out Zarathustra in astonishment. What do I here seek? Answered he. The same that thou seekest, thou mischief maker. Well, that is to say, happiness upon earth. To that end, however, I would fain learn of these kind. For I tell thee that I have already talked half a morning unto them, and just now were they about to give me their answer. Why dost thou disturb them? Except we be converted and become as kine, we shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. For we ought to learn from them one thing, ruminating. And verily, although a man should gain the whole world and yet not learn one thing, ruminating, what would it profit him? He would not be rid of his affliction, his great affliction, that, however, is at present called disgust. Who hath not at present his heart, his mouth, and his eyes full of disgust? Thou also. But behold, these kine. Thus spake the preacher on the mount, and turned then his own look towards Zarathustra, for hitherto it had rested lovingly on the kine. Then, however, he put on a different expression. Who is this with whom I talk? He exclaimed, frightened, and sprang up from the ground. This is the man without disgust. This is Zarathustra himself, the surmounter of the great disgust. This is the eye, this is the mouth, this is the heart of Zarathustra himself. And whilst he spake, he kissed with the overflowing eyes the hands of him whom he spake, and behaved altogether like one to whom a precious gift and jewel had fallen unawares from heaven. The kine, however, gazed at it all and wondered. Speak not of me, thou strange one, thou amiable one, said Zarathustra, and restrained his affection. Speak to me firstly of thyself. Art thou not the voluntary beggar who once cast away great riches? Who was ashamed of his riches and of the rich, and fled to the poorest to bestow upon them his abundance and his heart? But they received him not. But they received me not, said the voluntary beggar. Thou knowest it forsooth. So I went at last to the animals and to those kine. Then learnest thou, interrupted Zarathustra, how much harder it is to give properly than to take properly, and that bestowing well is an art, the last, subtlest master art of kindness. Especially nowadays, answered the voluntary beggar, at present, that is to say, when everything low hath become rebellious, and exclusive, and haughty in its manner, in the manner of the populace. For the hour hath come. Thou knowest it forsooth, for the great evil, long, slow mob and slave insurrection, it extendeth and extendeth. Now doth it provoke the lower classes, all benevolence and petty giving, and the over-rich may be on their guard. Whoever at present drip like bulgy bottles out of two small necks, of such bottles at present one willingly breaketh the necks. Wanton avidity, bilious envy, careworn revenge, populous pride, all these struck mine eye. It is no longer true that the poor are blessed. The kingdom of heaven, however, is with the kind. And why is it not with the rich? Asked Zarathustra temptingly, while he kept back the kind which sniffed familiarly at the peaceful one. Why dost thou tempt me? Answered the other. Thou knowest it thyself better than I. What was it drove me to the poorest, O Zarathustra? Was it not my disgust at the richest? At the culprits of riches with cold eyes and rank thoughts, who pick up profit out of all kinds of rubbish, at this rabble that stinketh to heaven. At this gilded, falsified populace, whose fathers were pickpockets or carrion crows or rag pickers, with wives compliant, lewd, and forgetful, for they are, all of them, not far different from harlots. Populace above, populace below. What are poor and rich at present? That distinction did I unlearn. Then did I flee away further and ever further, until I came to those kind. Thus spake the peaceful one, and puffed himself and perspired with his words, so that the kind wondered anew. Zarathustra, however, kept looking into his face with a smile all the time the man talked so severely, and shook silently his head. Thou doest violence to thyself, thou preacher on the mount, when thou usest such severe words. For such severity neither thy mouth nor thine eye have been given thee. Nor, methinketh, hath thy stomach either. Unto it all such rage and hatred and foaming over is repugnant. Thy stomach wanteth salter things. Thou art not a butcher. Rather seemest thou to me a plant-eater and a root-man. Perhaps thou grindest corn. Certainly, however, thou art averse to fleshly joys, and thou lovest honey. Thou hast divined me well, answered the voluntary beggar with lightened heart. I love honey. I also grind corn, for I have sought out what tasteth sweetly and maketh pure breath. Also, what requireth a long time, a day's work and a mouth's work for gentle idlers and sluggards. Furthest, to be sure, have those kind carried it. They have devised ruminating and lying in the sun. They also abstain from all heavy thoughts which inflate the heart. Well, said Zarathustra, thou shouldst also see mine animals, mine eagle and mine serpent. Their like do not at present exist on earth. Behold, thither leadeth the way to my cave. Be tonight its guest, and talk to mine animals of the happiness of animals, until I myself come home. For now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. Also, shouldst thou find new honey with me, ice-cold golden comb honey, eat it. Now, however, take leave at once of thy kind, thou strange one, thou amiable one, though it be hard for thee, for they are thy warmest friends and preceptors. One excepted, whom I hold still dearer, answered the voluntary beggar. Thou thyself art good, O Zarathustra, and better even than a cow. Away, away with thee, thou evil flatterer, cried Zarathustra mischievously. Why dost thou spoil me with such praise and flatter honey? Away, away from me, cried he once more, and heaved his stick at the fond beggar, who, however, ran nimbly away. And so the greatest takeaway out of that for me is the fact that the kind is a cow. I was wondering, I'm sitting here, I'm like, what kind of an animal is this? And then it got to ruminating, and I'm like, all right, well, that cuts down a whole lot of them. And then they name it. So once again, this is him talking about himself. This is a journey of self-exploration and self-declaration, right? He is explaining himself. This entire passage is meant to be dispersed among the people that he holds dear and not to the general public. So this is more of an explanation of his thoughts than anything else. There is a place for pity, but it should not overtake your life. There is a place for charity. We'll call it charity, right? The giving up of the wealth is close to charity. It is the opposite of greed, which puts it close to charity. But again, life is not about exclusion. It is about moderation. And so you shouldn't be giving away everything to become a beggar and then get mad that you don't get anything returned to you. He did isolate himself. He did eschew the various accoutrements of life, right? He wandered off to live in the mountains and wandered through the various hills and pathways next to the lakes and streams and all of the things, and conversed with animals quite extensively and with humans a whole lot less. It's understandable, if you hold yourself apart, it is hard to associate with those who do not. I understand that, but this again is just more self-reflection than anything. It is more of an explanation than anything, and so I don't have a whole lot to add to it. It is interesting to note that I believe we are possibly passing through the beginning steps of enlightenment, right? The various people could be various stops along the pathway. There should be 8 of them, but we'll see. Next up, the shadow. Scarcely, however, was the voluntary beggar gone in haste, and Zarathustra again alone, when he heard behind him a new voice which called out, "Stay, Zarathustra, do wait. It is myself, forsooth. O Zarathustra, myself, thy shadow." But Zarathustra did not wait, for a sudden irritation came over him on account of the crowd, and the crowding in his mountains. "Whither hath my lonesomeness gone?" spake he. "It is verily becoming too much for me. These mountains swarm. My kingdom is no longer of this world. I require new mountains. My shadow calleth me? What matter about my shadow? Let it run after me. I run away from it." That's a bad choice. Thus spake Zarathustra to his heart, and ran away. But the one behind followed after him, so that immediately there were 3 runners, one after the other, namely, foremost the voluntary beggar, then Zarathustra, and thirdly and hindmost his shadow. But not long had they run thus when Zarathustra became conscious of his folly, and shook off with one jerk all his irritation and detestation. "What," said he, "have not the most ludicrous things always happened to us old anchorites and saints? Verily, my folly hath grown big in the mountains. Now do I hear 6 old fools' legs rattling behind one another. But doth Zarathustra need to be frightened by his shadow? Also, methinketh that after all it hath longer legs than mine." Thus spake Zarathustra, and laughing with eyes and entrails, he stood still and turned around quickly, and behold, he almost thereby threw his shadow and follower to the ground, so closely had the latter followed at his heels, and so weak was he. For when Zarathustra scrutinized him with his glance, he was frightened, as by a sudden apparition. So slender, swarthy, hollow, and worn out did this follower appear. "Who art thou?" asked Zarathustra vehemently. "What doest thou here? And why callest thou thyself my shadow? Thou art not pleasing unto me." "Forgive me," answered the shadow, "that it is I. And if I please thee not well, O Zarathustra, therein do I admire thee and thy good taste. A wanderer am I, who have walked long at thy hills, always on the way but without a goal, also without a home, so that verily I lack little of being the eternally wandering Jew, except that I am not eternal and not a Jew. What, must I ever be on the way, whirled by every wind, unsettled, driven about? O earth, thou hast become too round for me. On every surface have I already sat, like tired dust have I fallen asleep on mirrors and window panes. Everything taketh from me, nothing giveth. I become thin, I am almost equal to a shadow. After thee, however, O Zarathustra, did I fly and high longest, and though I hid myself from thee, I was nevertheless thy best shadow. Wherever thou hast sat, there sat I also. With thee I have wandered about in the remotest, coldest worlds, like a phantom that voluntarily haunteth winter roofs and snows. With thee have I pushed into all the forbidden, all the worst and the furthest, and if there be anything of virtue in me, it is that I have had no fear of any prohibition. With thee have I broken up whatever my heart revered, all boundary stones and statues have I overthrown. The most dangerous wishes did I pursue. Verily, beyond every crime did I once go. With thee did I unlearn the belief in words and worths and in great names. When the devil casteth his skin, doth not his name also fall away? It is also skin. The devil himself is, perhaps, skin. Nothing is true, all is permitted. So said I to myself. Into the coldest water did I plunge with head and heart. Ha! How oft did I stand there naked on that account like a red crab? Ah, where have I gone, all my goodness and all my shame and all my belief in the good? Ah, where is the lying innocence which I once possessed, the innocence of the good and of their noble lies? Too oft, verily, did I follow close to the heels of truth. Then did it kick me in the face. Sometimes I meant to lie, and behold, then only did I hit the truth. Too much hath become clear unto me, now it doth not concern me any more. Nothing liveth any longer that I love. How should I still love myself? To live as I incline, or not to live at all, so do I wish, so wisheth also the holiest. But, alas, how have I still inclination? Have I still a goal, a haven towards which my sail is set? A good wind? Ha! He only who knoweth whither he saileth, knoweth what wind is good and a fair wind for him. What still remaineth me? A heart weary and flippant, an unstable will, fluttering wings, a broken backbone. Thus, seeking for my home, O Zarathustra, dost thou know that this seeking hath been my home-sickening? It eateth me up. Where is my home? For it do I ask and seek, and have sought, but I have not found it. O eternal everywhere, O eternal nowhere, O eternal in vain. Thus spake the shadow, and Zarathustra's countenance lengthened at his words. Thou art my shadow, said he at last sadly. Thy danger is not small, thou free spirit and wanderer. Thou hast had a bad day. See that a still worse evening doth not overtake thee. To such unsettled ones as thou seemeth at last even a prisoner blessed. Didst thou ever see how captured criminals sleep? They sleep quietly, they enjoy their new security. Beware, lest in the end a narrow faith capture thee, a hard, rigorous delusion. For now everything that is narrow and fixed seduceth and tempteth thee. Thou hast lost thy goal. Alas, how wilt thou forego and forget that loss? Thereby hast thou also lost thy way. Thou poor rover and rambler, thou tired butterfly, wilt thou have a rest and a home in this evening? Then go up to my cave. Thither leadeth the way to my cave, and now will I run quickly away from thee again. Already lieth, as it were, a shadow upon me. I will run alone, so that it may again become bright around me. Therefore must I still be a long time merrily upon my legs. In the evening, however, there will be dancing with me. Thus spake Zarathustra. The shadow is all of the darker parts of you, right? That is the part that you have to come to terms with and assimilate if you are going to be on the path to ascension at all. You have to accept the fact that you have a shadow side and that it is the part of you that revels in the not good parts, right? The parts that lead you away from truth, the parts that lead you into temptation. Those are your shadow, but they are also a key, fundamental part of you and inseparable from you. The pursuit of the light is a beautiful thing, but the rejection of the darkness will lead you into more darkness. You must learn to accept your shadow as it is, and not that it has to be. Noontide. We'll probably wrap up on this one. And Zarathustra ran and ran, but he found no one else, and was alone, and never found himself again. He enjoyed and quaffed his solitude, and thought of good things for hours. About the hour of noontide, however, when the sun stood exactly over Zarathustra's head, he passed an old bent and gnarled tree, which was encircled round by the ardent love of the vine, and hidden from itself. From this there hung a yellow grapes in abundance, confronting the wanderer. Then he felt inclined to quench a little thirst and to break off for himself a cluster of grapes. When, however, he had already his arm outstretched for that purpose, he felt still more inclined for something else, namely, to lie down beside the tree at the hour of perfect noontide and sleep. This Zarathustra did, and no sooner had he laid himself on the ground, in the stillness and secrecy of the variegated grass, than he had forgotten his little thirst and fell asleep. For, as the proverb of Zarathustra said, one thing is more necessary than the other, only that his eyes remained open, for they never grew weary of viewing and admiring the tree and the love of the vine. In falling asleep, however, Zarathustra spake thus to his heart. Hush, hush! Hath not the world now become perfect? What hath happened unto me? As a delicate wind danceth invisibly upon paraqueted seas, light, feather light, so danceth sleep upon me. No eye doth it close to me, it leaveth my soul awake. Light is it, verily, feather light. It persuadeth me, I know not how, it toucheth me inwardly with a caressing hand, it constraineth me. Yea, it constraineth me, so that my soul stretcheth itself out. How long and weary it becometh my strange soul! Hath a seventh day evening come to it precisely at noontide? Hath it already wandered too long, blissfully among good and ripe things? It stretcheth itself out, longer, it lieth still, my strange soul. Too many good things hath it already tasted, this golden sadness oppresseth it, it distorteth its mouth. As a ship that putteth into the calmest cove, it now draweth up to the land, weary of long voyages and uncertain seas. Is not the land more faithful? As such a ship tuggeth its shore, then it sufficeth for a spider to spin its thread from the ship to the land. No stronger ropes are required there. And such a weary ship in the calmest cove, so do I also now repose, nigh to the earth, faithful, trusting, waiting, bound to it with the lightest threads. O happiness, wilt thou perhaps sing, O my soul? Thou liest in the grass, but this is the secret solemn hour when no shepherd playeth his pipe. Take care, hot noontide sleepeth on the fields. Do not sing, hush, the world is perfect. Do not sing, thou prairie bird, my soul. Do not even whisper, lo, hush, the old noontide sleepeth. It moveth its mouth, doth it not just now drink a drop of happiness? An old brown drop of golden happiness, golden wine? Something whisketh over it, its happiness laugheth. Thus laugheth a god. Hush, for happiness, how little sufficeth for happiness. Thus spake I once, and thought myself wise. But it was a blasphemy that I have now learned. Wise fools speak better. The least thing precisely, the gentlest thing, the lightest thing, a lizard's rustling, a breath, a whisk, an eye glance. Little maketh up the best happiness. Hush. What hath befallen me? Hark. Hath time flown away? Do I not fall? Have I not fallen, hark, into the well of eternity? What happeneth to me? Hush. It stingeth me, alas, to the heart, to the heart. Oh, break up my heart, after such happiness, after such a sting. What? Hath not the world just now become perfect, round and ripe? Oh, for the golden round ring, whither doth it fly? Let me run after it, quick. Hush. And here Zarathustra stretched himself and felt that he was asleep. Up, he said to himself, thou sleeper, thou noontide sleeper. Well then, up, ye old legs. It is time, and more than time. Many a good stretch of road is still waiting you. Now have ye slept your fill. For how long a time? A half eternity? Well then, up now, mine old heart, for how long after such a sleep mayest thou remain awake? But then did he fall asleep anew, and his soul spake against him, and defended itself, and lay down again. Leave me alone, hush. Hath not the world just now become perfect? Oh, for the golden round ball. Get up, said Zarathustra, thou little thief, thou sluggard. What, still stretching thyself, yawning, sighing, falling into deep wells? Who art thou then, my soul? And here he became frightened, for his sunbeam shot down from heaven upon his face. O heaven above me, said he, sighing, and sat upright. Thou gazest at me, thou hearkenest unto my strange soul. When wilt thou drink this drop of dew, that fell down upon all earthly things? When wilt thou drink this strange soul? When, thou well of eternity, thou joyous, awful, noontide abyss, when wilt thou drink my soul back unto thee? Thus spake Zarathustra, and rose from his couch beside the tree, as if awakening from a strange drunkenness. And behold, there stood the sun, still exactly above his head. One might, however, rightly infer therefrom that Zarathustra had not then slept long. And that's where we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this one up. I'm not sure how many we got left. The next one may wind up having to be long because we should be coming up on the end. But this seems to be a fairly good place to stop because this was self-reflection, right? If we take that the previous people that he met were all aspects of himself and all aspects to be overcome, and that the passage in sending them up to the cave was indeed him working to overcome it, then this would be the last step before actual ascension. Now, I have stated before, and I do believe that he had not achieved that, right? There was a sense of despondency all the way through that is not part of actually being enlightened. You can have bad days, but they don't overcome you. You can have bad moments, but they don't become your moments, right? Once you have attained even a little bit of enlightenment, and I don't claim to be a master, but I'm definitely steps ahead of him, those things fall off a little bit easier. They are a little bit harder to lend credence to. Maybe somewhere as we go further along, we will see some of that redemptive arc, right? So far, that has been noticeably absent. He is bitter, he is lonely, he is bitter, he is lonely, repeated. That seems to have been his lot in life, and in large part, that is a chosen lot in life. He gave away the blessings, right? He became the hermit. He tried to be the magician, and it did not seem to work for him. He may have even tried to follow the path of the priesthood, and that didn't work out for him either. There are very valid reasons to doubt the control systems. There are very valid reasons to seek within yourself the kingdom of God, because within yourself is where the kingdom indeed lies. But in order to get there, there are steps that you have to take, right? Prayer, fasting, and meditation are the key beginnings to understanding yourself. Prayer is talking to God. Fasting is preparing yourself to have him talk back, and meditation, let me not put that by itself, meditation is him talking back to you. And so all three of those are key components. But in your meditation, you should be ruminating upon the various points of contention within yourself. There are 7 internal chakras, and each one of them dominates a particular field of human nature. There are 7 virtues, there are 7 vices, and they are the polar opposites of each other. You have greed and charity. You have lust and chastity. There are 7, and they are the opposites of each other. You are meant to live in the middle of them. You only get to the middle of them through prayer, fasting, and meditation. Otherwise, you are going to be excluding one or the other all along the way, and you will never incorporate that shadow into yourself. You will never understand that it is a part of you, but it is not the best part of you. It is the part that shines the light on the best part of you. And the best part of you is the part that you were supposed to follow, the part that you were supposed to chase. You have to take in the shadow, but you should not be chasing the shadow. And then once you get to that, there is a meditative process that does not take an awful long time. It involves some golden berries. And so this could very well be part of that. I don't know. We will see in the wrap-up whether or not he actually attained the Enlightenment. I have said before, and I will say again, it is entirely possible they got really close, because it appears that he may have been able to flip that switch, but he was not able to completely disengage, and that is because he had not fully assimilated the proper things. He did not spend the time with the 8 laws of creation, and therefore, when he tried to flip the switch, it did not work for him, and he wound up disabled instead of gone. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I know that this is a little bit more esoteric than should be for philosophy, but it is what it is, right? I have a certain amount of knowledge. I am trying to give that knowledge back. I'm not entirely sure that Nietzsche did, and so I am pointing that out. Hopefully I don't step on too many toes along the way, but if I do not apologize for it. It is merely what has to be done. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.